Dr. Julio Montaner, our guest, he is a physician, a passionate physician. Where did you study in school?
I studied internal medicine. I was going to do respiratory medicine. And then this pneumonia appeared in the early 80s when I was doing my training here at St. Paul's. And it was an unknown pneumonia, previously uncharacterized, in a setting that was very unusual, mostly healthy, young, homosexual men. So I started to study that. And one thing led to the next. That was AIDS, and we didn't even know it.
And as a doctor, did you have to get over some of the stigma, some of the fear, the early fears?
Oh, yeah.
That if somebody sneezes or you touch somebody's cup and they're HIV infected, you could get it?
Yeah, no, you know, I had to say that, you know, if I look at myself 30 years ago and look at myself now, I wouldn't recognize myself. I learned a lot by hanging around with people who were infected, people who were affected. I learned from them in terms of how they live, what they do, and how to approach rationally and emotionally issues of sexuality and drug addiction. All of this was foreign to me. I was a little, you know, Argentinian guy that showed up in Vancouver, and all of a sudden my eyes were like this. But, you know, by familiarizing myself with these issues, I developed a level of comfort and a level of tolerance that I wasn't born with.
And a level of compassion that it takes to do this work, any doctor.
Yeah, and I think that I don't mind telling the story, because I think it gives people the sense that this is something that we can and should learn, and we should become comfortable dealing with these difficult issues. Because if we do that, then we have an opportunity to rationally approach these problems and then find solutions for them, as we've done in British Columbia.
Who should be tested?
We currently say that everybody who has been sexually active in the last 5 decades should have at least one HIV test. And I realize that people are going to roll their eyes and say, oh my God, you know, what are you talking about? But the reality is that the only way we're going to be able to address the HIV epidemic in this province is by doing that. And the good news is that 99% of the people that are going to test, 99% plus, are going to be HIV negative. So all we're saying is, look, we want you to take the test just to know that you're HIV negative. Because what happens otherwise is that you make the assumption that you're HIV negative, you don't really know that you are, and you walk through life passing on the infection to others. We have now found people over the age of 70 who show up in the hospital, neither the doctor nor themselves suspecting that they were at risk. Kaboom, we do the test because we have normalized the test, we're offering it to everybody, and they test positive. Now, that's good news in the sense that we found that they're HIV positive, and we can offer them the treatment, we can make them better, and move on. But that person was HIV undiagnosed for more than a decade. That's not good.
Is it always a decade, or could you have HIV, which never turns into full-blown AIDS, and walk around for 40 years with it?
Well,
possible?
A decade is the average sort of time between infection and disease progression. Some people can progress faster, but some others can take much longer than that. So exceptionally, you can have people who can be 2 decades or 3 decades without developing symptoms. Now, we want to get rid of all of that because having HIV is not good for you. It generates an inflammatory response that affects your kidneys, your liver, your heart, your vessels. So, you know, you're wearing out as a result of the HIV being active in you. So what we're saying is, look, if we test people, we'll find a whole lot of people who are HIV negative. We don't need to worry about them. But for the few that are going to be HIV positive, we have a solution for their problem. And in doing so, in bringing the treatment to the people, we can solve our collective problem.
And if you have not been tested and you've been living with the virus for a decade, what are the symptoms?
The symptoms are multiple. What happens is that because HIV undermines your immunity, you become immune deficient. So your immunity is down, you're basically subject to a whole lot of things. You can have fevers, you can have sweats, you can have weight loss, you can have pneumonia, you can have eye infections, digestive tract infections. I mean, I could go forever. Waiting for the symptoms is a bad idea because the symptoms only develop when your immunity is very, very low. There could be non-specific symptoms like dandruff or eczema or glands, but these are things that can happen to you, to me, to anybody.
And
so
now everybody's wondering, gee, you know, I had a night sweat. I hope I don't have.
But you see, we don't want people to react based on symptoms. We want people to understand. We need an HIV test on your medical chart, no matter what. Just do it.
How early? What age?
Yesterday. I mean, if you're sexually active, you know, the age doesn't matter. You know, it's not a matter of age. If you have been sexually active, you deserve, you owe it to yourself to have an HIV test. You owe it to yourself and to your partner and to your future partner. So get the test and we'll be happy, all happier.
Okay, who discovered this? How long has it been on the planet? Do we know?
Well, those are different questions. It is estimated that HIV transfers from monkeys to humans in Africa probably between the 30s and the 50s. So it's been around for a long, long time. What happens is that this was a monkey virus. Hunters in that area got exposed through manipulating the carcasses of the animals, and as a result of that, what it used to be a circumscribed infection, an endemic infection, when the Trans-African Highway opened up and migration started to happen and tourism, then the disease started to spread. It probably came into North America somewhere around the 70s. It wasn't really characterized until 1981 when the first sick people were identified in small clusters in New York, in Miami, San Francisco, etc. And then it took another 3 years until 1984 for François Barré-Sinoussi, primarily, a French virologist in the Pasteur Institute, to characterize a virus that was associated with the development of the disease. This was eventually confirmed, and so she eventually got the Nobel Prize for this. Françoise is a good friend of ours. In fact, she is the upcoming president of the International AIDS Society, which makes us very proud.
And you were past president,
were
you not?
I am.
Thought. So what determines the global reach of this treatment? Who determines it? What's happening in China? What's happening in Africa?
You know, the standard of care is global. Like everybody has now accepted that the cocktail that we unveiled in Vancouver in 1996, in the summer of 1996, that transformed the epidemic in the north of the world, has now become the standard of care for the world. The World Health Organization, the United Nations AIDS Program has said that's the way to go. We need to do just that. What has happened as of recently is that there has been a recognition that our novel approach of treatment as prevention is actually even a better way to go. And so the same agencies are beginning to say we should move in that direction. We should treat more, because treating more people is good for the people, but it's also good for preventing both disease progression but also transmission. So this is happening, but the truth is that the effort is lukewarm in the sense that many bureaucrats, not just in our own country federally, but also elsewhere in the world, and many politicians, they find HIV an inconvenient topic. And so they're always thinking about short-term investment, and they say, oh, well, it's too much money up front. The reality is that HIV continues to spread. And this is like a mortgage. You know, you can't get rid of this unless you make an upfront investment. The beauty of it is that if you invest a large amount upfront, then the new cases decline, and so very quickly, within 5 to 10 years, your number of cases goes down, so the mortgage is shrinking.
Sure. So would it be fair to say they're more interested in malaria, getting rid of malaria, than HIV in a country like Africa, or?
You know, the sad reality is that politicians are often more interested in buying luxury cars and jets and bombs that they are investing on health. Yeah, sure, malaria, maybe, but the truth is that even the malaria campaigns, the TB campaigns, the HIV campaigns, the smallpox campaigns, they are very anemic. We as a society need to understand that there is so much we can do in terms of health, and yet we're not doing it.
Well, as we watch in many of the villages where kids die of malnutrition, they die because they don't have food and water.
Right, right.
You know, or they have dysentery and they die, and we can...
It's unforgivable, unforgivable.
We can change that, for sure. So what, if you could wave the wand in Ottawa and make something change in this country to prevent HIV/AIDS?
Well, I think that what I would do immediately is to develop a national strategy to control HIV and AIDS. Normalize HIV testing and ensure that everybody that is HIV positive has access, not mandated, but access to HIV treatment. Saskatchewan has seen a 5-fold increase in the number of HIV infections. Ottawa, the city of Ottawa, has seen epidemic rises in HIV. Newfoundland is seeing rises in HIV. How come BC has seen a 60% decline? What are we doing? What do we know that the rest of the country doesn't want to know?
Well, we have you living here. That helps. But it's really puzzling. I don't know if it's an economic thing, a money issue.
Listen, it has nothing to do with the economy, because the reality is that if you don't address it today, these are the people that are going to become sick tomorrow. They will drive a resurgence of tuberculosis, for example, because HIV-infected people will drive that secondary epidemic. They will increase hospital utilization. So the economics of it are actually so simple. The more we test and treat today, the more we save in terms of suffering, health, and money at the end of the day.
Right, but what's wrong with taking, say, the polio model?
Well, polio has a vaccine.
Right.
So that's the difference. But you can use the tuberculosis model, where test and treat has been a strategy that has worked very well to control tuberculosis. It didn't eradicate it altogether, but it has decreased tuberculosis in North America dramatically over the years. That's what we've done for HIV. But there is no national appetite.
Problem with research money? Somebody working on a vaccine?
You know, the research in the vaccine area continues. This is not going to be an easy nut to crack. The virus evolves very rapidly, mutates continuously, and so it's very difficult to create a vaccine that is going to capture all of that rapid evolution.
So that's not an option.
So, well, I think the research should continue, but we cannot wait for that to happen. It'll take another generation to get a vaccine in the field that's going to work.
But when it's not on the cover of Time magazine, HIV/AIDS, or the stories aren't in the national news, people aren't tweeting about it. I know some are. It's also a problem.
Right.
I mean, it's out of mind.
It's sort of, it dropped. It's not quite up high in the radar screen as it used to be. Why? Well, because you don't see people dying from AIDS in the streets anymore. Right? I mean, remember 20 years ago, it was pretty sad. So there is a distance now. But what people don't realize is that the transmission is still happening. And so the fact that we don't see them doesn't mean that they are not happening. And the fact that they're happening means that there is a lot of suffering out there that could be avoided. And we know how to do it. BC has shown the world how to do it. What we need is the goodwill to make it happen in the rest of the country and eventually the rest of the world. China, by the way, has embraced our program. China has come to us and said, Dr. Montaner, we want to work with you to adapt your program to the whole of China. So if China gets it, why is Ghana doesn't get it?
Well, I suggest we get on the bus.
I agree.
Okay, nice to see you again.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Always a pleasure. Dr. Julio Montaner, Director for BC Center for Excellence in HIV/AIDS.